Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today, why won't my Holdfast stick? So you finally built a good bench, you put in your Holdfast and you pound on it and it won't stick. The thing keeps popping up and you keep working on things and it keeps coming loose. That can be incredibly frustrating when you see people use these to great effect, but in your own bench they're not working. And there can be a lot of reasons for that. So today I'm going to be looking at the Holdfast, I'm going to be looking at the holes and how do you fix a couple different things. So first off, let's take a look at the Holdfast themselves. These are ones that come from Black Bear Forge. They are some of my favorites. And I love his work. But there's a couple different types of Holdfasts. Number one, the best are the hand forged. You can tell it by all the dimpling on the shaft. They have a lot of texture in them. It is a solid piece of forged steel. They're incredibly strong. These are a lifetime tool. Number two, you can get the bent rod. I don't have any of them because all of mine are the hand forged. I'll be talking about that in a little bit. But basically they're a piece of 3/4 inch steel that has been bent. You have a smooth shaft and you'll see the 3/4 inch steel goes all the way up and around the arm. And then at the end it's just squished down to a flat spot. And then last you have the ones that are cast, and usually they come to a sharp corner up here at the top. The top bar is a very hard square, it's not rounded, and those are the least quality, the ones you're going to be finding on Amazon most of the time. Now I used to have a set of cast Holdfast, but the problem with them is that they are cast. They are kind of brittle, and if you hit them too hard, they will snap on you. I actually broke both of mine, and you'll talk to quite a few other people who've had them broken, but they are incredibly cheap and you can order them just about anywhere. But generally I'm going to tell people they're not worth it. Spend a little bit more and get the next one up. The mid-grade quality are the ones from Gramercy or others like that where they have a smooth shaft. It is bent rod that is just bent to shape and has the top flattened. Relatively, they are inexpensive and they are a great chunk for the money. The problem is the shaft doesn't have a lot of texturing on them and they are a little bit finicky. They have a tendency to bend back a little bit more than the forged Holdfasts. But they do work very well, and for the money, they're probably the best place for most beginners. And then last up we have the forged Holdfast, and these you can often tell they're forged. You can see the scale work on them. A lot of times they'll have delicate things put into them. These are the pinnacle of Holdfasts. They are incredibly strong, they are resilient, they have a texture that holds well into the holes. These are just the all-around best Holdfast. You just have to spend a little bit more because someone actually goes through the process of pounding these by hand. So next up, let's actually look at how these work. Now, if you have a 3/4 Holdfast, it's designed to go through a 3/4 inch hole. Doesn't mean that it needs to be a little bit bigger. It can be a little bit bigger. You can use 7/8 inch hole for a 3/4 inch Holdfast, but it is designed to go through a 3/4 inch hole. So now let's imagine this is a cross section of the bench with the Holdfast sliding down. There should be a little bit of wobble, not too much, but as you pound it down on, it's going to kink in the hole, and it's going to be touching up here, and it's going to be touching down here. These 2 points of contact are what holds it in. It is the friction at these 2 points that keeps this locked in place. If that friction is too low, then it's just going to pop out. That's also why pounding on the back here allows it to come loose. You pound on the back and you release the friction from this point, and the whole thing can then slide out. So if your bench top is only 1.5 inches thick, it can twist in that hole very, very easily, and that makes it very easy to grab on this edge and very easy to grab on this edge. But if you have a thicker bench, 3 or in my case 4 inches thick, that means that the angle change is very, very slight, and so it needs a little bit more force. So with the thicker bench tops, these can sometimes have a little bit of issue. Then that also changes depending upon the material your bench is made of. If it's made of something hard like maple or beech, it's not going to compress as much, and so you're not going to have as much friction from this trying to push into the wood. But if you're made of something soft, like a Douglas fir or pine, then it's going to very easily compress into the wall. So if you have a pine bench or poplar or something soft like that, you can make these holes very, very long and the Holdfast still hold really well. But if you have a hard bench, you get down to 2 inches and sometimes you might still have issue with that. So it kind of depends on the thickness of the bench as well as what it's made out of. So then that brings me to some of the myths that I've heard, and I've heard, I don't know how many people say, you can't use a Holdfast on a 6-inch thick bench. I have to say, I have used a Holdfast on a 6-inch thick bench. I've used a Holdfast on an 8-inch thick bench. There's just a few things you either got to do to it or you got to make some slight modifications. But yes, you can use a Holdfast on any bench as long as the shaft is long enough that it will go through and still connect on both sides. So if you're slipping, the easiest thing to do is to add friction, especially if you have one of these smooth shafts that are just bent rod. You can easily add a little bit of friction. Now with hand forged, you tend to get this dimpling that is actually very, very good for holding on. But sometimes you need a little bit more of that if your bench is pretty thick. Because what happens as it goes in there and it kinks in that, you want to have this point having a lot of friction. You want to have this point having a lot of friction. So what you can do is grab a file and come in here and just add some file marks on the back and around the side. So I'm putting them up high on the back, and then I'll come down a little bit lower and I'll put some more down here. And these little file marks will give it some friction to then hold into the bench. I know a lot of people just absolutely freaked out. You mean I'm going to take a file and destroy my hold? It's a tool. Putting some filing, a little bit of friction in the back really helps these perform a lot better. Give it a try. You're not going to ruin the Holdfast. The other thing you have to think about is where to put those friction marks. Yes, you want them on the back, on the top. However, if you are going to be clamping large items, then you'll want them all the way down here, and then you'll want them on the front over here. But if you're just clamping a bunch of small items, then you'll need them here and here. So you end up doing a lot of friction all the way along this side and a lot of friction all the way along this side just to add those spots into it. But if you're only working with thin stuff, then you only have to worry about that small area there and that small area there. Now the next thing you want to look at is the bench hole itself. And you'll notice on this, there's some epoxy that has dripped down in that hole. A lot of times you'll get finish or things like that that fall in the hole, or you just completely finished your bench top and there's some wax that has dripped down in there. And that lowers the friction of the wood. And that may be the problem. So to fix that, I usually grab a large round file, or I could even use one for chainsaws. And I'm just going to go through, I'll grab the bottom underneath, and I'll just run around the hole. Roughs it up a bit. It doesn't have to be a fine one. Actually, a coarse one's a little bit better. And just like that, we've roughed up the surface, we've gotten rid of the glue, and this will now hold a lot better. I can actually pick up my bench with this. So this is effectively the thickness of my bench top. It's about 4 inches. Now, 4 inches generally works okay, but I'm starting to have a little bit of a problem. I need to make sure that my holes are nice and rough so that these actually go all the way through and work. But if your bench gets thicker, or you're still having problems with it, or you are something smooth like maple, you're going to still have some issues with this at 4 inches thick. So what you can do is effectively make the bench a little bit smaller, but right at these spots. You can come back in and drill from the bottom with a thicker bit and counterbore the hole. Doesn't need to be much, just an 1/8 inch or so. A little bit bigger, and so now the effective spot of the bench is smaller. And so now this will twist and touch here and here, as opposed to here and here. Or if you have a standard taper reamer, you can actually come in and ream out the hole at that standard angle to whatever you want. And so again, it will be touching here and here as opposed to here and here, giving you a slightly thinner bench at that spot, not making it any weaker, but it is allowing the Holdfast to hold a little bit better. And before I move on, I know I have a lot of people asking about the leather feet on these. How do you get the leather to stick on the steel? Isn't that impossible? No, it's actually just hide glue. So I use some hide glue. You can get the Tight Bond brown tube, put it on there, and I've had this on for probably about 5 years now, and it's still holding perfectly fine. So yeah, hide glue, steel and leather, works really well. You can also get those boots that slide over, and so it's just a leather boot, but I've never much liked those as they tend to slide off and disappear. Just gluing that on, you get the exact same thing, and it works really well. So when people ask me about problems they're having with their Holdfast, I have to go through a whole list of questions. Number one, it could be the Holdfast. It could be that the shanks are too smooth, or that they have been bent out and you don't have this arch on there anymore. Over time, especially on the cheap ones, this will actually start to bend out and become 90 degrees, and then it just doesn't work as well. You need this extra space up here in order to get that spring that you're looking for. Usually, if you have a good Holdfast, then the next thing I'm going to say is talk about the bench. Do you have anything stuck in your holes? Do you need to clean them out with a file or rasp, or even some sandpaper down in there to give a little bit more grit? Is your bench so thick that it's having a hard time bending in the slot? In which case you may want to remount from underneath and make the hole a little bit bigger so you have effectively a thinner bench where the holdfast is. And if you're still having problems, then go at it with a file and give yourself a little more friction on the holdfast. And it's amazing how strong these can be. You have people wondering how they can actually do what they do, but these are strong enough I can pick up my 400-pound bench with a holdfast just with a little bit of friction in the hole. So I hope this answered a few questions. This is one of those things that can be really, really frustrating. If your holdfast isn't holding, what can you do to make it a little bit better? It is a very simple tool, an incredibly old tool. And when it works, it is phenomenal because it's so fast. You can just put it in, tap it down, and you've got a good, solid, functioning lock on what you're doing. And it comes off just as easy. It is an amazingly fast tool when you actually get it working right. So if you do have any other questions or ideas, I know there's a bunch of other things I didn't talk about. The Veritas with the screw down. I'm not a huge fan of those, but I know a lot of people absolutely love those. It's a slightly different thing, but it works under the same principles. So if you're having problems with that, the exact same things apply there. And there are a few other odd ideas out there and other methods, and so let me know those in the comments down below. I'd love to hear those. If you have any other questions or ideas, let me know that. I do read through all the comments and I answer as many as I can. So thank you for watching, and I do want to say an even bigger thank you to all the patrons on Patreon and members here on the channel, people who are actively supporting this channel and helping us grow and be more than we are. Thank you for that. Everyone who's scrolling over on the side, without you, we would not be here. So thank you. If you do ever meet anyone who's scrolling on the side, tell them thank you, because they are literally the ones keeping the lights on and keeping this channel going. So I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. See, now, that's a hold fast. When they got the fancy knobs or other things to crank down, those are hold slows. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. Ah, it actually stuck. Ah.